should I ask you about? Last 12 months, generally. And let's see. Are you all right with me asking you last 12 months?
You're going to clap it?
Yeah. So I want to speak to you on this episode about, from a CEO founder's point of view, various different topics, both internally and externally, but let's start sort of generally speaking externally. So we are approaching year-end, financial year-end for us, kicking over into a new financial year, and it's always a good place to take stock, I guess, and look backwards as well as, therefore, how looking forward is looking. So from your perceptions, your experience at the last 12 months, let's go externally and what we've all encountered and had to navigate through. What are your overriding feelings? Where does your mind go to immediately if I was to say to you, Lee, last 12 months, how do you reflect on it?
Well, there's quite a few places that I immediately jump to in my mind. AI is prevalent. Sales cycles are prevalent. Budgets prevalent. All these things, all the considerations, I think they would probably be my top three, I would say.
Let's do each. Should we do each one?
Yeah.
Let's come to AI not first. So first, let's go sales cycle.
Well, I think you're front line on this one. I think sales cycles in my mind, if I look to 2019 pre-pandemic, sick of talking about it, but it's relevant. I would say the sales cycle was about 12 weeks-ish.
Yeah.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
I think that's currently sat at about 6 months,
yeah,
I would say. So it's doubled since then, which is understandable, but makes planning, forecasting quite difficult. And what has happened, I think, is if you've got a process in place, a persistent sales process where you're actively generating new work, what seems to happen is it queues up, so you'll be working on multiple different opportunities. The sales cycle, being the length of time that it is, means that it all comes at once. So you'll have cycles of nothing for 6 months, and then you'll get 4 or 5 new clients all landing within the same 4-week period, which from a resource perspective makes it really difficult to plan. I don't know what the rest of the market looks like, but I think fast forward to now, I think that's coming down. I would say it's probably around about 4 months at the moment.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with that. It hasn't dropped down to what you said pre.
No.
It certainly hasn't. I'd also give a little bit of one of the many reasons why I think we can evidence this, why I think this is the case, is the number of people involved, stakeholder, at decision stage and pre-decision stage, and those stakeholder groups looking different. So what I mean by that is we might pitch to a group of stakeholders, but ultimately that then snowballs at decision stage, so beyond pitch, into a couple more people, and you do your best to try and bring as many people into the room that that you can eliminate some of these delays, let's call them. But it just, you can do your best, but ultimately there might be, I mean, we've got an opportunity, I think at the moment, or a very recent one at least, where it almost specifically said, we have investors that it pretty much said you won't get to meet them, got to go through the sort of rigmarole with us. If you're our choice, then it goes through almost like round 2 with the investors. I'm presuming that would just be a get it over the line job rather than a round 2 official, re-pitching sort of scenario. But that said, there's more and more of that happening, I've seen, over the last 12 months certainly, 18 months, maybe even longer. Stakeholder groups and decision-making committee has got bigger.
Yeah, I would add that the interrogation around terms and contracts has increased.
Yeah.
off the back of it all as well. And I think that is probably tied into what you're saying there about the second round of stakeholders that then get involved. Rather, before, there was less forensic interrogation of the terms. Now it seems that at the very least it's queried in detail.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I'm not saying that it wasn't paid attention to, but I think the resistance was much less when it comes to contractually.
Yeah, more
signing
scrutiny. Yeah, maybe even more eyes.
Yeah, I
at
think
that
so.
stage as well. So contracting stage has become, i.e., negotiations and fees and all that is happened, but you're at contract stage. That has become its own stage.
I also think that upon reflection, there's probably a little bit of the fact that we've shifted in terms of the scale of client that we're working with. So the clients we're now working with have legal teams in-house and procurement teams and stuff like that, whereas I think probably 2019 we were in a position where that didn't really exist too much.
Yeah, I mean, I ran our figures because of the reason why we're having this conversation. Approaching year end, I ran some of our figures and taking stock. I mean, I do that every day, but taking stock more officially on a sort of last 11 months, 10 months period. Just yesterday, and the value of an opportunity to us in this last, say, just call it 12 months versus 12 months before versus 12 months before, it's just come on leaps and bounds. So yeah, we are opening ourselves up to longer sales cycles just by virtue of size of resource on the client side to be able to scrutinise these things, and ultimately they're paid to do that job, aren't they? And that's their career path, to be in legal, to be in procurement.
Yep.
So yeah, you naturally open yourselves up to those sorts of things. But it's interesting, because I agree with you, it's interesting that you said maybe at its peak it might have been a 6-month job, that we're looking at a sales, lead time sales cycle from maybe first conversation to close and hopefully starting that work, and that you reckon it might have dropped down slightly to maybe currently like a 4-month ish.
I think about 16 weeks at the moment would be about average.
I think so as well. And interestingly, when you're saying about don't know we do know what's happening out in the market. I mean, with what I do, I'm connected with a lot of other salespeople, and it's the same. It's the same rhetoric. It's the same narrative that they're discussing and have been discussing for probably longer than 12 months, actually. I think it'd be really silly of us to not discuss some of the forces that are at play that everyone is having to navigate, and one of the massive ones is, I can't quite believe this, we've officially been in cost of living crisis for nearly 3 years, between 2 and 3 years. It's just that's nuts. So obviously there are forces there that are at play. So it's that, when we're talking about maybe more scrutiny on be more diligent and more scrutiny on things like a contract, for example. Yes, size of client and resource, but I also think there's external factors regardless of your size as a potential client, as us, working with potential suppliers. We need to be more, as I said, diligent and vigilant with the sort of research and the things that we're committing to ourselves, and our clients are doing exactly the same.
It's interesting, I was thinking about this yesterday, in the context of what you were saying there. I think that agency services, from a marketing perspective, have been wildly underpriced for quite a long time versus the returns that they generate.
Yeah.
And I think we're moving into a period where the value that agencies are capable of delivering is being realised. What that's meaning off the back of everything else increasing cost of living wise is that agencies are starting to charge more and starting to be confident charging more.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a long time coming, to be honest.
And do you think that's driving, therefore, more scrutiny?
I think so. It's like when I don't know what the comparison would be, but you're making a big purchase, let's say you're buying a house.
Yeah.
You go through a lot to make sure that you have as much confidence as you possibly can in what you're buying. And I think when you get to the scale where you're talking hundreds of thousands of pounds more, it's like, right, I want to be confident that that's going to be used to the best of its capability.
Yeah. And as we've talked about so many times before, and I personally just don't see it, we'll talk about AI. This might be a lovely segue. There's just more and more options for clients nowadays. And I was going to say more and more agencies, but I don't mean that. One of our biggest sort of potential competitors isn't always just a like-for-like agency, is it? As we know, it can be in-housing, it can be, there's various different options for what a client thinks the value that they are looking for from an agency it can come in different forms in their mind in terms of those options. So that's popping up all the time. And I think with AI as well, there's going to be more and more people who are creating AI focused and centered businesses, be it one man sort of businesses all the way through to, fully fledged agencies in the traditional agency model is what I mean by that. So there's more competition out there as well. Competition, as I said, might be a like for like, it might be more left of field and a little bit lesser thought of. But we mentioned AI there, and that was one of your 3 things that you've identified in terms of your last 12 months reflection. So what have you seen from AI last 12 months? Not only what have you seen, therefore what do you think is coming, if anything, but also sort of more critically, where are we in that journey, and what's your not only opinion but experience of it, and where you see us not only adopting, because we've already adopted AI, but how does our journey going forward as an agency, and even you personally with AI, look, given what you've seen for the last 12 months and what you're sort of forecasting to see? This is on the back of the Apple announcements this week, for example.
I think I'm always interested when anything affects time. One of the best examples that I can draw on is Uber. Uber, when it first launched in 2012 or whenever it was positioned as a taxi business.
Yeah.
And everyone except for a small group of people, including the founders of Uber, were aware that they were selling time, not a service. It took a while for everyone else, I think, to catch up, including investors. But that's always interesting to me. And I think we've gone through the last 10 years having information accessible at our fingertips at speed. However, it's still been not an effort, but it's still been positioned as providing value, whereas I think AI is commoditizing information.
Yeah.
Which means that services like marketing services are becoming scrutinized because the information around what people are buying is more prevalent, and also you throw AI in the mix, and there's so much documented around how it can improve efficiency in marketing that I think it can downvalue the specialists that then have to execute on it.
Yeah.
Where I think brands that are using external agencies need to focus is, when it's done right, this is gonna allow for you to get more value.
Yeah.
It's not gonna replace the people that you need to execute a good strategy, but it will allow you to run better data. It will allow you to execute tasks quicker. It will allow the people that have got it accessible to them to deliver more for the money that you're giving them.
Yeah.
So where I think maybe 12 months ago when it first sort of broke publicly and people became aware of it, everybody was like, oh, it's going to replace
we're off. Yeah.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yet it's not. It's like the shift in, like we've been talking about for years now, the shift in user journey to social, to the amount of touch points now for brands to get an end result is exponentially higher than what it was 5-6 years ago. So it's the same concept for me with AI. Shifting to a search strategy almost felt like a necessity for us to do because it was the right thing for the clients.
Yeah.
AI is the same. Like, I've been using ChatGPT since 2020. That's 4 years ago now.
Yeah.
You think of the speed in which AI has moved just in the last 12 months and the explosion that's happened. The best use case that I still come to is if it can improve efficiency, do it and use it. And that's the approach that we've taken, and that's the approach that I think we'll continue to take.
Do you think clients are looking for an agency who can ally with what AI does from a time, like you've almost said, almost like I'm going to dumb it right down, but to like almost like the manual tasks that might be included in their account, managing their account, growing their account? I'm thinking from a client side. Do you think they're looking for agencies to be able to ally with it, use it, interpret it, that AI right now can't do, which is as I said, the interpretation of what AI, for example, is able to do from a data perspective to then do something with it, i.e. creative, for example, campaign creative. It's almost like AI with your agency sat on top of it, and that's where the value of the agency through specialisms and people and creativity and strategic thinking, that's the layer of agency value that sits on top of what's maybe behind the scenes, which is AI. As I said, it's almost like a partnership is where I'm thinking of it, i.e. a client's going to turn around to us, and when we've sort of been put on the spot more and more, it's in line with this scrutiny in terms of like, where are you spending your time? I don't think a client wants their agency to turn around and effectively give them answers that they believe that AI could be doing for the agency. So therefore it's almost like, as I said, that sort of mundane, more manual sort of data focused stuff, analysis, for example. They almost want to see that that's ticked off, that's looked after by AI, because on top of that, it's the interpretation of that. It's the doing the so what, answering the so what that comes at an agency sort of personal specialisms, creativity, strategic deployment level. Like, do you feel like that's what brands will and maybe even currently are looking for, that an agency's working with AI, obviously to the best of their abilities for ultimately creative strategic thinking of whatever AI is spitting out for that agency?
Yeah, and I think it enhances intelligence when it comes to marketing strategy, and I think brands should expect that agencies that are doing it the right way will be in a position to advise on process client side as well and offer efficiencies in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you've got an in-house team of marketers, for example, and you're working with an agency and the agency recommends a process or an enhanced process using AI that isn't already in place, great.
Yeah.
I think the best way I can think about framing it is if you think about AI as a tactic in the many strings to a marketer's bow, and you look at like SEO, for example, there are so many things within SEO that is done, and the specialists understand and interpret what needs to be done to make a change that's going to positively influence and impact results. It's the same concept with AI. It's just another thing that needs to be taken advantage of, that enhances speed, but it doesn't replace.
No.
Not yet, anyway.
No, that's what I was saying about like a current state of play. If you think about it as well, if every agency defaulted to effectively outsourcing to AI, all brands that they're working for would feel very much the same. So right now as well, there's a competitive angle to look at what your competitors are doing. If they're not wholeheartedly investing, basically outsourcing their strategy to AI, campaigns, execution, all that sort of stuff, like wholeheartedly to AI, then you've got to be wary of what your competitors are doing, and AI can sort of help with that from a research perspective, but you're still going to need the interpretation of that and the breaking through the noise, all that sort of stuff that you're looking for from marketing perspective.
But marketers will ruin it. They'll ruin AI for brands because they will commoditize it. So take AI influencers, for example, is a good example. There are probably a handful, 10 case study AI influencers at the moment that are generating thousands, hundreds of thousands of pounds off the back of being a fabricated influencer in a certain space, and then brands are using them and it's working, it's fine. What's going to happen is everybody's probably going to do that. There will be agencies that are created that just do that, and then AI influencers will become so popular, so prevalent that it's a commodity. So brands will then come full circle and want to work with human influencers, and then that's full circle, and that's what will happen. And I think it's going to be a really interesting time to watch everyone try and figure that out.
Yeah. It's quite scary, that. But, yeah, AI. Your third thing was budgets, was it? Talk to me about that then. Last 12 months, how do you reflect on specifically client budgets, and what have you seen from budgets?
Well, I think we touched on it slightly in the sales cycle question, didn't we? Whereby brands, clients are looking at everything in more detail. Budgets is obviously something that gets scrutinised, but I think the level of detail and the amount of eyes that get put on it is increasing. The expectation on returns is increasing. It's just how it is. I think the comfort, the one positive that I would say in that in the context of that question would be that the comfort level of talking about it openly is increasing. So even on new biz, it's like budget is it's no longer a taboo. It's
it's not.
Right,
let's get
budget.
This.
And I think confidence, like I was saying about agency services being underpriced, the confidence from agencies to then say, well, that's probably not enough to do what you're looking to do, has increased massively. And I think the education, which kind of gives me confidence around the pitch process as well. I know that's going off on a tangent, but I think the comfort of talking about budgets, agencies communicating expectation for the budget that brands have available is probably going to, in another, I'm going to say pessimistically, 2 years, mean that agency comfort level at saying it's going to cost us $8,000 to pitch. Have you got $8,000?
Yeah.
Will probably increase, and that stigma around pitching in general will probably change slightly. I'm foreseeing.
Yeah.
But I think that ties into budget conversations, and I think
it
that comfort level from agencies has increased because it's become the norm for budgets to get questioned and scrutinised, which has meant that agencies are probably like, it's rubbing them up the wrong way a little bit. Yeah. So the comeback is they're almost justifying it before they've even had the question asked.
Yeah.
And I think that whole thing is quite a good exercise, to be honest.
Yeah, it's certainly played out in evidence of it. And whilst we're on budgets, I think we need to shout out our most recent example of our forecasting process.
Yeah.
So big shout out to Daniel in particular, our SEO team, technical SEO team again in particular, and alongside our dev team, which is constantly improving. But what was it that in the last run of, so we've just had a recent QBR with an e-com client. I can't remember the sessions forecast versus actuals was ridiculous, but in particular the revenue was not, I calculated we forecasted it 0.2% out to the actuals, and sessions will have been very, very close. I didn't actually pull that because I'm always thinking about revenue rather than traffic and sessions, but for my conversations. But to have seen that we went, this is a constantly evolving, firstly it's a need to actually be able to demonstrate this and navigate these conversations with our clients, potential and existing, in terms of clients. And also, obviously, it's around what we just talked about budgets and being able to show a return and forecast a return as well. And to be able to turn around and with the vast amount of work that constantly goes into our SEO forecasting process, to be able to turn around with that accuracy against actuals is phenomenal.
Yeah,
I shared it on LinkedIn. I got some people specifically in that space, which is exactly what I wanted to do. It really resonated with them. Like, feels almost illegally accurate, which is amazing, isn't it? Like, that's 0.2%.
Yeah, it was it's been 9 years in the making.
There you go.
Getting to the point that we're at with it.
And it doesn't stop either.
No, it's constantly evolving, but it is, well, it gives you the confidence. I mean, that forecast was done in November last year, I believe. May's sessions and revenue is what we're talking about, and that the revenue was there was 168 quid difference in what we forecasted versus what was delivered, and there was sub 1,000 sessions difference in the sessions that we proposed versus what was actually delivered. And I think that as a example of confidence in a process is pretty good.
Yeah. And it's like we've said, more of these conversations are going a bit deeper, aren't they, with budgets, returns, forecasting, all that. And we recognise that and understand that. And we understand the powers that are forcing people's hand into that. All we can do is, as best as we can, navigate those with as much accuracy and honesty. And then, as I said, it's so refreshing and it's so validating to turn around and be able to put those forecasting accuracies after actuals in front of that client, as well as, to be honest, giving ourselves a pat on the back, because that's amazing. I mean, we don't know, we're not privy to other people's forecasting methods, but you got to be confident in your own, and that certainly comes on leaps and bounds. So yeah, it helps those budgeting conversations. I think they're your three reflections, aren't they? Going forward, is there anything on your mind, on your radar for the next? I mean, 12 months is a long time, innit?
12 months is like 5 years now.
Exactly, bloody hell. So is there anything that you, apart from those things that you talked about, that you're particularly on your radar of interest concerning anything?
I think obviously, like you mentioned, we're in the run-up to the end of our financial year. So the last 3 months have been spent looking deeply into where we're at performance-wise, where we're going to be, where we want to be. I think the area of focus for us at the moment is operational efficiency. It's been something that we've worked really hard on the last 12 months. We've spent the last 12 months, I think, we sort of hired ahead of a sales curve that is providing a really fruitful outlook for the next 12 months, down to process improvements, operational improvements. So when we're sort of doubling down on making sure that continues, and trying to build structure around that.
Are you expecting economic, so cost of living crisis, for example, are you expecting to be able to breathe a bit more in the context of that, do you think? Obviously it's hard to forecast. People are paid to forecast, economic forecasting. So I'm not putting you on the spot in that way, but what does your gut feeling tell you? I mean, what's the inflation figure at the moment? It's down.
I don't know. It's down a lot more than they expected. I think if we're going into that, I don't think the base rate will drop that significantly. I don't think we'll ever return to where we were with it, or anywhere close to it. I think we might arrive somewhere about 3.5% at some point. But in terms of the outlook, I think it's positive.
Yeah,
I think it's largely positive.
Have you got any significant concerns, really, more to the points of flipping that round, given what we've been navigating as the backdrop, the economic backdrop?
I mean, if you look at it and you zoom out a lot and you think about it at a global scale, let's start with the UK, where we've got a general election on the 4th. Mm-hmm. That could swing a lot of stuff in a lot of different ways.
Yep.
So that's an unknown as it stands, which could have a big impact. And then we've got a general election in the US. Now, that's going to be important because who's running and who gets in. I don't think Biden, from what I've seen, I don't know what his back office looks like, but I don't think he's the best placed for America at the moment.
Really doesn't seem so.
And then you've got, I mean, we could go deep. I don't want to go into geopolitical issues and things like that, but I think in terms of the outlook from our perspective, let's say, I feel like the opportunity in front of us is a much more exciting one right now than it was 2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years, yeah.
Because the economy is much more stable. I don't think it's perfect by any stretch, but it's much more stable.
Yeah.
And I think that our capability and the way that we've navigated the last 2 years has been well executed. Not without its challenges by any stretch, but well executed. And it now is looking like certainly the last 12 months of knuckling under is starting to provide some good results.
We're at an exciting point I'm sure we've said this each time we've reflected last 12 months, 6 months ago, bloody whatever. But we're at a really exciting time in terms of where we are today, what the pipeline looks like. We've talked through it, so we don't need to go into it too much detail, but the type of clients, the size of clients, the ambition of those clients, the ambition of us that matches the clients, having those conversations about finding best fit opportunities for us as much as the other way around, for brands to find the right agency for them. And I think we're clearer on defining, we're always getting clearer on, we're defining it with more and more criteria, what best fit is for us, not just good fit, but best fit. That's really exciting to have got to this point, and I can only foresee it getting more and more exciting going forward as that definition becomes tighter and tighter and tighter. And obviously we grow as well, which we've been fortunate enough to do year on year as well.
Yep, I agree with that. This or that. Self-taught learning or teacher-led learning?
I'm going to say self-taught, despite my education background, but we have talked about my education background. I'm so over it.
I think AI will disrupt this.
Well, yeah,
massively.
Out of interest, what would your answer be?
It's fucking self-taught. You know my background.
Yep. But it's, my background is different to yours, yet we're coming to the same answer. And interestingly, obviously, you extended it to AI's involvement in that. But yeah, from my experience.
Do you know what a really good recent topical example of this would be? Doctors. Doctors train for minimum 7 years and then they specialise, right? So now they're introducing AI into detecting cancer, robotics for operations. Is that going to disrupt how doctors are trained and how healthcare is delivered? Yeah.
It's going to be really interesting given, whenever it was, several years ago now, when university fees shot up. The scrutiny that's going to come under from a decision
100%.
perspective, and it'd be really interesting for me to, it was many years ago now, but when I went to uni, compared to maybe seeing lectures and classroom learning going forward, how it would change. It would almost basically be tech centred for something like that ordinarily wouldn't have been.
There's got to be, unis have got to be thinking, we need to.
It's got to be competitive suddenly. Yeah.
Interesting. Early mornings or late nights?
I've switched in my old age to early mornings. Genuinely, I've noticed as I've got older. Since we introduced early starts as well, like early office hours, flexible hours, I seem to take, which I would never have forecasted years gone by, seem to take advantage of early. So yeah,
nice.
Are you just always awake?
Yeah, at the moment.
That's right.
But yeah, I've always been fairly early morning anyway. Yeah, I wasn't one of those people that slept until 2 PM.
Oh no.
New customer acquisition or existing customer upselling?
What should I say here?
I'm a politician with this one because I think there's a lot of value in both, but
I'm going to say new customer acquisition. I think be true to myself, be knowing those highs that I've got to experience in my career. But the reason why I hesitate is probably because we'd share similar views on both as well. So I would certainly never alienate the other. But yeah, if I had to pick this or that, put me on the spot. It's going to be new customer acquisition.
Damn for Prime Minister. Cornish pasty or sausage roll?
Sausage roll.
Really?
Yeah. Are you the opposite?
I'm on the fence.
Yeah, sausage roll.
You can have a bad sausage roll. I don't think I've ever had a really bad Cornish pasty.
Not enough filling. All pastry.
Yeah. Email or LinkedIn DM?
LinkedIn DM for me, yeah. On a number of different reasons. LinkedIn DM, I think. What about you?
I'd rather have a call.
Well, yeah. What about receiving out of those two? Which would you do you have?
It's really, really hard because all my DMs are fucking useless. Email, same. I get like fucking all sorts of shit.
It's just another way of saying the same thing.
So yeah, I know if someone phones me, it's probably real.
Something to be.
McDonald's or Burger King?
McDonald's.
I mean, that's a non-question. Commission-based pay or salary-based pay?
Salary.
DIY projects or hire someone?
Oh, God. Is it classed as hiring someone if you just get someone in your family to do it for free? I guess that's not hiring,
Probably
is it?
not, no.
No, freebies. Yeah, hire someone.
I think I would try to do. I mean, I consider myself fairly handy, but I would probably value the time.
Yeah, I don't consider myself handy at all. Bloody useless.
That's it.
Nice.
This or that. Good.